Hey everybody, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
You're watching Now Let's Review. We're going to be reviewing the Engwe L20 e-bike next on Now Let's Review. All right, so let's jump right in, Jesse. This is a very affordable fat tire e-bike. So the L20, not to be confused, by the way, with the L20 2.0. If you go down that route, you get a foldable e-bike, the 2.0, and it's $799. This is not foldable. The MSRP on this is $11.99, although you can probably get it for $9.99. So that's the one we're seeing now. It's the L20, not the 2.0.
So it is a step-through e-bike. It has a 750 watt rear hub motor with 950 watts of peak, and it is a cadence sensing e-bike, which means that as you pedal, it will detect that you're pedaling, and then it will essentially throttle up the motor to a certain speed, and you decide the speed based on the pedal assist levels. So you'll have 5 different levels of pedal assist, and it's kind of the cheaper option in terms of e-bikes, and that is why it is in the budget category.
It's got 20-inch tires, so not those big like 26-inch tires, but they are 4 inches wide, so you get all the benefits of fat tire. It's got a 48-volt, 13-amp-hour battery. A lot of numbers there, but basically...
It's not very big.
It's not very big. If you multiply those two numbers, you get 624 watt hours. And here's a little tip for everybody out there. You can get the watt hours, which to me is an important number, by multiplying the volts times the amps. And that's going to tell you, the watt hours is going to tell you like how much energy is stored. Something around a kilowatt hour is good, but below that is usually not enough.
And again, we're in the budget category. And another side effect of that is that the charge time for the battery is 6.5 hours from empty to full. So that is going to be kind of overnight. You're not going to be going on an extremely long bike trip, but let's talk a little bit about the battery. They claim that this battery has 90 miles of range maximum. And then they have their own little asterisk, and they say it depends on the rider weight and how fast you're riding and all sorts of stuff like that.
I mean, I don't fault them for that, but let's be honest. In our testing, the testing that we did was with level 5, so really fast, and lots of throttle, very little pedaling. So this tells you the worst case, right?
I would say it is the worst case, but it's also a very common case.
Yes, I think once people get throttles, they use them.
Yes, and also I think that when it comes to cadence sensing e-bikes, there isn't a lot of pedal motor balance. I think that a lot of times with cadence sensing, you're kind of stuck with using the motor for the most part. So this is going to be pretty indicative of a lot of trips. Let's talk about it. So
what we found in our testing was, so you get 5 bars. This is the only way you can tell how much is in the battery. We used 14.5 miles with the first bar. When we got down to the third bar, we'd used 23 miles. When we got to the final bar, we had used 28 miles. So we kind of extrapolate that you would get about 35 miles if you did it like we did, but you could expect 40 to 50 miles if you did more pedaling and you lowered your speed.
And I think that I'm going to say that I'm very skeptical of getting 90 miles.
Unless it's all downhill with the wind at your back.
Well, and the other point is, all e-bikes have technically an infinite range as long as you are prepared to pedal them all yourself. So it's like, well, you could claim almost any range, and that's kind of the problem with it. We did a little bit of testing just so that way you get kind of a sense.
But you know what you can do?
What?
They sell a second battery. You can get an alternate battery here for $379. It's actually a bigger battery. It's 768 watt hours. They claim 99 miles of range. I would argue that's not true. It's probably 55 miles of range. It's pricey, but it's not the worst idea.
Let's talk for a minute about range. Most of these e-bikes, including this one, go about 25 miles an hour. So you have a 25 mile an hour top speed. And if you were to go, say, 35 miles, that's going to take you over an hour of going top speed. And let me tell you, unless you are in somewhere that has either really, really great and straight bike paths with nobody else on them, you are going to be going slower than that speed. So we're talking at least a 2 or 3 hour bike ride. If you're used to a 2 or 3 hour bike ride, maybe this would be enough range for you. You might want to think about something that has more range. But I think for the average person who hasn't touched a bike since they were 13 or 14, I think that this is going to be plenty of e-bike for you. It will definitely whet your appetite in terms of e-biking at a very low price. And then if you start to get excited about e-biking after that point, I would be very excited for you. You could switch to a bigger and better e-bike, but this is definitely a good starting place.
I want to talk about rider height for a second, because I think this fits into what you were talking about. So the rider height they suggest for this bike is 5 feet to 6 feet, or 155 to 185 centimeters. So I think kids, teenagers, this is a great first bike for them to go to school and to go to soccer practice in, because I think it's the right size for that. And because it's fat tire, it's really feels safe.
I agree. I think that this would make for sort of that transition vehicle from when you have the kid who, is turning 14, 15, still can't get their driver's license. Then even when they turn 16 and maybe even 17, those 2 years where you don't have to buy the crappy car that you will then have to inevitably spend thousands of dollars on maintenance or repairs for, I think is going to save you all the money that this e-bike will bring and more.
Also, for that occasional repair you have to do, I think it's great for kids to learn how to fix tires and brakes and stuff like that, because it's just at the right level of mechanicalness that they can do, whereas they can't usually fix a car. Let's talk about the brakes. 160 millimeter front and rear. These are cable brakes, not hydraulic. That's how they kept the price low. It's got a front fork suspension, not rear suspension. So good at soaking up some minor bumps, but it's not going to be great with like major potholes.
It has a Shimano 7-gear shifter that we've seen on so many different e-bikes. It's very run-of-the-mill, but it does work pretty darn well. Let's talk about the rubber handlebar grips. These are pretty standard for a lot of the cheaper e-bikes.
What I did like is it's got a half twist throttle on the right.
Oh, I don't like the half twist throttle at all.
Why not?
Well, half twist throttles, they first of all take some getting used to, because the thing that you're supposed to grab onto on the bike is now a throttle, which can be a little bit dangerous for some people, because they'll grab the handle thinking that they're grabbing the handle and it turns out it's the throttle and they start going. And that can be very scary. The other thing that I would say is that even when you're used to the throttle, if you do end up using the throttle, which I anticipate you will do a lot with this e-bike because the cadence sensing is kind of mediocre, it means that your left hand will have a good grip of the left handlebar, but the right hand is going to be busy twisting the throttle, and because you're going to want to kind of fine tune it, it means that your right hand isn't going to have like a firm grasp on the handlebar.
Oh, and also you won't really be ready with the brake. I like to do the stance a lot where I'm kind of ready to pull the brakes.
Me too.
It saves a half second when you need it.
Now, the good news is if you do hit either of the two brakes, it will cut the throttle. They have switches for that, which is really nice. But I would say that it's just a little bit harder stance. I like the thumb throttles just because you can just lift your thumb as opposed to having to like let go of your whole right hand.
The fenders are included, which is great for this price range. And I love fenders because they keep you from getting dirty.
Nice metal fenders.
It only comes in 2 colors, even though on the website there are 4. 2 of them seem to be out of stock. Maybe that'll change by the time you see it. But the only 2 that we see are avocado green and onyx black.
And what you're seeing on screen is the Onyx Black.
So the little LCD screen on the bike shows you just some rudimentary stuff. So it's got a 5-bar battery meter, which I wish was a little more in depth because we've talked about this before. You'll see 5 meters for a long time and then it'll drop quickly. You've got your speed, your pedal assist settings, your headlight. And I don't like this. When you turn on the headlight, the screen dims. And a lot of times I like to keep my headlight on even in the day, which means now I have trouble seeing the screen.
Not that there's too much to see on the screen.
True.
I mean, you do want to check your battery from time to time, but again, the battery monitoring is so bad. That's really going to be the tough part about this bike. You're going to just kind of have to get to know it in terms of the range, because basically you're going to see 5 bars for, like we said, like 14 and a half miles. And then all of a sudden the next 14, you're going to almost run out of juice.
Yeah, it's not linear. And that's what's stupid about meters. You think they're linear, but they're not. You think, oh, if I went 14 and a half miles and I used 1 bar, then I could just get 4 times that. And you can't.
I much prefer the batteries that either have a percentage, although those are usually a bit wacky too. My go-to and my favorite is the battery voltage. It takes a little bit of brain power for you to have to like interpret what the battery voltage means in terms of range, but at least it's a much more reliable way than having, a 1 to 5 scale of
I just
how
wish
much
they could program in a non-linear curve so that you could still use meters, but they'd mean something.
But hey, it's a budget bike. I don't think that you should be expecting to go on very long distance trips with this one. Don't think that you are going to go 90 miles on this bike.
But e-bike manufacturers, it would not cost you much. It's just a little coating, and then we'd all have much more accurate meters.
Sure.
It has a decent seat, and by that I mean it's not like super tiny. I think people are tired of bikes that have super tiny seats. Unless you're going to be in Tour de France, I think you should have a comfortable seat. This one has springs, which is nice.
Yeah, especially since it's an e-bike and you're not going to have to pedal that much. It means you're going to be sitting on your butt a little bit more, and that means having a nicer seat is good.
The dumb part, though, is is you have to release the seat forward, and then you also have to move the clamp out of the way to get the battery in and out.
Yes, this was clearly an oversight. I've seen a bunch of different e-bikes that have the battery behind the seat post, and a lot of them have seats that fold forward so that way they get out of the way of the battery. This one is dumb because the seat clamp that basically keeps the seat from going up and down and twisting left and right is in the way of the battery sliding out, so which it completely defeats the point of having the fold over.
And here's the problem. I know what you're all saying. It only takes seconds, Zach, so what are you getting upset about? Well, the thing is, I can never remember where I set the seat. And so if I've finally got a good seat setting and then I get my battery out and I'm like, oh crap, where did I have the seat mounted? I have to play around with it for a while to get back to where I was.
Let's talk a little bit about the key. So
I hate keys.
Almost all e-bikes come with keys. We had one e-bike that didn't come with a key, but it was somehow worse. This e-bike comes with a key. It is used to unlock the battery, so you can lock the battery into the bike and prevent somebody from stealing just the battery. You can also turn the bike off or on with the key. And this,
I guess that's okay. I mean, it gives you some security. It's just that I don't think that I'm going to remember the key all the time.
Yes, that is the big problem with keys and e-bikes is if you keep it in the bike, that makes it easier for someone to steal it. It also makes it easier to snap the key off, which then means that you have to hire a locksmith to fix your e-bike.
My hack is don't keep the two keys together. That comes with two. Put one someplace safe.
Yes.
It's a 6160 aluminum frame. It's not folding, so we've talked about that, which means this is kind of a heavy bike. So it looks like a normal size bike, but it weighs 74.8 pounds or 34 kilograms, which means you're going to have trouble if you're like me lifting this onto a bike rack or upstairs. Just know that it's heavy.
I would say that this is a lot more of like a garage bike. If you have the opportunity to park it somewhere near your house that you don't have to lift it anywhere downstairs or get it into a car to get it anywhere fun, this could be a very good around town vehicle if you kind of treat it more like a vehicle and a little bit less like a bike where it's like, oh, I will lift this. No, it weighs 75 pounds.
There's a nice place to mount your water bottle. I don't think that'll keep you from getting in and out easily. There's a bell. And what I like is there's a double-sided sprocket guard. You think it's not a big deal until at one time when you catch your pants or something like that. So it's just nice that it's on both sides.
Let's talk about the front basket and the rear rack.
Yeah, those come included.
Those come included. It's a very nice touch, especially for such a budget e-bike. But I do have a couple of gripes with them. The front basket isn't really a basket in the traditional sense. You're not going to be putting peaches in here. They're going to fall right through.
It's more like a rack.
It's more like a front rack, which means that you're going to have to come up with something to kind of mount either a backpack or an actual basket.
I mean, I think with a bungee, you can throw your backpack in it, no problem.
Yeah, I mean, you can do lots of different things. I just think it's got a lot of holes in it for being called a front basket.
What we're showing you here is that we got the 7-liter trunk bag for $25. There's also a 35-liter rear rack bag for $65. I would recommend some kind of bag because you've got the rack.
And the max load of the whole bike is 264 pounds. So with a larger rider, it means that you're not going to be carting around cargo necessarily, but I think that the rear rack is a nice addition. I think that a milk crate would be a great little thing to make this into a pretty decent city bike, because that 750 watt motor with the 950 watt peak is going to be able to take you up hills, and the range is decent enough for most small cities.
It's got a decent front headlight, and I think overall for the price, this is a fine bike. Like, nothing fancy. It's not super well built or super great components, but everything is fine.
It's a really great entry price, I think. I think that you can go a lot further than this in terms of bikes. If you wanted to spend just a little bit more money, you can start getting into, torque sensing and bigger batteries, more range, stuff like that. But overall, I would say that this is as close to default cheap e-bike, I should say, that you can get. And I really don't have many other complaints other than, your typical cadence sensing is kind of rubbish stuff.
So let us know down in the comments what you think and questions that you might have. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell button so you won't miss any of our upcoming reviews. We'll see you guys next time on Now Let's Review.